Hello, everyone. Thank you for tuning in to Success Studio Live. I am your host, Tara LaFon Gooch, CEO of Best Branding Solutions. On this show, we do things differently. I interview purpose driven leaders, visionaries, subject matter experts, and people that are actively looking to make a change, build community, and create impact in this world. We can only do that by sharing our stories, by being vulnerable, and by being authentic. So we go much deeper than just a surface level here on this show. We dig deep and talk about interesting topics that actively change people's lives. So, who other than to bring on the show today, my special guest, Veronica Lorca Smith, all the way from Hong Kong. Welcome, Veronica. How are you doing today?
I'm great. Good morning. It's tomorrow here. So good evening if you're in the US or in Europe. I'm doing great. Thanks, Tara. It's a pleasure to be here.
Thank you so much for being on my show. We've been connected on LinkedIn for a couple of months. I've seen your progress. It's amazing. It's inspirational. You're inspiring me all the way over here from, the States, a half a world away, truly. But this evolution took time, right? You're building your personal brand, you're showing up in profound ways, you're putting yourself out there, you're doing really big and hard things. But was this an overnight success? I mean, talk us through a little bit of your journey and how you got to this point today.
Absolutely, Tara. And I'll share my story and then I will leave it to the audience to judge if it was an overnight success or not.
Okay.
So, to give a little bit of background on how I started all this journey of writing, but personal branding more broadly, I want to share a little bit of a story. So, during COVID in August 2021, I was living in Hong Kong. This is home. I've been here for many, many years. And I left with my daughters on a holiday, what I thought was going to be a holiday. And as we landed in Spain, Hong Kong suddenly changed the quarantine policy and we were trapped overseas. We were not able to come back. So, with that, we were trapped first in Spain, couldn't come back. My husband was here, my dog, my house. So, we decided to go to Australia, which is my husband's country. And once I arrived in Australia with my two very young daughters, who were 3 and 4 at the time, I wanted to continue my career. I've been in the corporate world for almost 20 years or 18 at the time, and I started to look for jobs. And all I found was rejection. I sent more than 50 emails, and the pile of no's kept on getting bigger and bigger. And I just wasn't able to find a job. So it really hit my confidence. And I realized that if I was being rejected and if people were not seeing my value, it was up to me to create it. It was up to me to showcase it. It was up to me to show the world what value I could bring. And so that's how my personal journey, my personal brand journey began, by really trying to look at things differently and putting myself out there. So on the 4th of July of 2022, so not even a year ago, I posted my first post on LinkedIn. And that was a post where I was just opening up and being vulnerable and telling the world that I was looking for a job. I was not being successful. I didn't have a network and I wanted to build one. And so that's where my journey started. And 10 months later, I've published two books, well, 2.5, because I have a third one that is co-authored. I publish every single day on LinkedIn. I started to speak publicly in forums. I'm going next week to Singapore. But it took a lot of time and it took a lot of vulnerability and it took a lot of change in mindset and looking at things from a different angle.
Wow. What a success. I would not call that overnight. This was something that took months. But you know what's fascinating? The bridge to success from failure, really, failure to success is actually very short. It's very small. We think of these goals like if you were to have told yourself just last July, again, you said it, it's not even a year. Veronica, this time next year, you're gonna be authored by not one, not two, but two and a half, because you co-authored a book as well. Books. Would you have believed yourself at that point?
Absolutely not. When I started, I just felt so small. But even though I felt small, I dreamed big. I knew that I wanted to do something big. And by big, I mean making an impact. I wanted to have a positive impact on the world, on my community, on my daughters. They really inspire me. So I really had this mindset of dream big, but start small. So if someone had told me that in 10 months I would have books, absolutely not. But what I knew, what was crystal clear, was that every single day I wanted to be better than the day before. That was for me this whole idea of get 1% better, take a
Mm-hmm.
new course on LinkedIn, write
Mm-hmm.
an article, create your newsletter, put yourself out there, speak at conferences. Every day I was trying something new. And for every 10 no's that I got, I realized that there was one yes or one maybe. And so that just gave me the fuel that I needed to keep motivated and keep going. And the book is just one part of it. But as I was saying, I started to speak in public. I started to freelance as a consultant. I do LinkedIn Lives every single week. None of that was happening 10 months ago, but it was this mentality of incremental progress every single day.
Well, you know how passionate I am about the 1% rule. I might just write a book on that myself, just that one rule. Why? Because it nothing impacts your life greater than steady compound interest, right? It if we think about in a financial way, in a monetary way, what impacts our finances and our wealth greater? Compound interest, right? It's how banks get wealthy. Well, we can take that same compound effect and apply it to self improvement initiatives. And when we get that just 1% better every day, it really adds up to huge changes over time. One of my favorite books is The Compound Effect. I don't know if you've ever read it, by Darren Harding. Great book. And in that book, he talks about, you know, the winner of a horse race, the thoroughbred that wins the horse race, doesn't win by minutes, right? They win by a nose. A nose. That's microseconds. But what is that horse or what did that horse do to get to that point? Did they train more? Did they eat healthier? Were they more consistent? And because they were more consistent and had these stacked up habits, they won by a nose and they got 10 times the prize money.
Mhm.
That's pretty powerful.
Absolutely.
I love that. But talk to us about your books. And I've everybody, for your benefit, I put a QR code here on the screen. You should be able to see it. Go ahead and scan this QR code so that you can be taken to the site and check out Veronica's amazing books and support her work. But I'd love for you to talk a little bit about these books, Veronica. You've got The Lemon Tree Mindset, which is an awesome name, and I love the cover, and then Conquering Your Burnout. Let's talk about that first one, The Lemon Tree Mindset, a little bit. How'd you come up with that title? That is so neat.
So the title is an interesting one. As you can notice from my accent, English is not my first language. I'm Spanish, and I learned English later in life. And there is this saying in English that says, "When life gives you lemon, make lemonade."
Yep.
And I actually thought about this saying, and I was like, I don't think it's quite right. I think the right mindset is, if life gives you lemons, use the seeds and plant your own lemon tree, because this is my
Ooh.
mindset of growth mindset and incremental progress that we're talking about. So that's how the title came about. Playing with the words, playing with my diversity, the fact that I'm not English, that English is a second language. So there was a wing to that. But when I wrote this book was actually when I started this reinvention journey that I just talked about. So I went from being unemployed in a new country that was Australia at the time. I
Mhm.
didn't have a network. I was rejected by corporates. And I started this whole reinvention. I started writing on LinkedIn. I started writing on Medium. I started to speak in podcasts. And it was pretty amazing going from 0 to 6 months later. I had a decent audience on LinkedIn. I'm on Medium with a decent audience as well. I built my own publication on Medium. I became a freelance consulting, and I have quite a bit of work from that, because diversity, equity, and inclusion is such a big topic that corporates are really interested in. So I do webinars, I do workshops, and things like that. I started to speak in public. And then when I looked back at this journey, a little bit to what you're saying, I was like, oh, wow, all of these change happened, but it wasn't one big thing. It was just this small improvement, this small progress
Mm.
every single day. And I thought, I know 100% that there are people who are struggling like I was. There are people with the layoffs, particularly in tech, or moms who are dads who are coming back to work after having kids and they don't really know where to get started, or foreigners like myself who don't have a network. And I was like, I have a story that can inspire, but more than a story, I have a framework. I have a framework because I have used that framework to reinvent myself. And I tried to ask myself, okay, Veronica, if you were to tell your best friend, what did you do to reinvent yourself so that she or he or they can do the same thing? What would that be? And so it was almost like reverse engineering and saying, okay, what was the very first thing that I did? Well, I had to convince myself that I had value. I have to convince myself that I have a uniqueness and that my value is here to help other people. So first it was really build that self-confidence. And then from there I started to break it down, deconstruct success, this overnight success that took, well, it's still ongoing,
Yeah.
but roughly a few months, deconstruct it into specific actionable things that anyone can do no matter where you are. Anyone can build in public. Anyone can start to build a personal brand. Anyone can start to build their value proposition. So I broke it down into these 19 specific steps so that anyone who feels a bit lost and wants to start or change path or have a new career can implement it. So that was the whole story behind the lemon tree mindset.
I love it. What a great story. But when life gives you lemons, plant those seeds and grow your own lemon tree. I mean, I love it. It's perfect. Conquering burnout. That sounds like something that you have had experience with. You were in the corporate world before. Um, how was that? Did you have an experience with burnout? And if so, can you talk a little bit about it?
Yes, absolutely. So, as I mentioned before, I've been in the corporate world for almost 20 years in large organizations, smaller organizations as well. And one of the jobs that I had, it was a combination of things. I was a mom of two young kids. It was the beginning of the pandemic. I was traveling the world for this job nonstop. It was a regional role, which meant that I was almost 24/7 on because that meant that I had to be up for calls with Australia and New Zealand. That were the countries that were first up, all the way until New York, which is 12 or 13 hours behind. So, all this combination, plus the culture in the company, it just wasn't a good fit for me.
Yeah.
And slowly, I started to lose myself in this process. First, I called it stress. Then I said that it was a bit of anxiety. Then I told myself that things are going to get better, but it didn't. And week after week and day after day, I just felt that I was losing a bit more confidence and I was feeling less like myself and I was starting to feel lost until one day I was celebrating my husband's birthday and I received a call from work. It was negative feedback about a presentation, nothing major to be honest, but I just lost it and I started crying and crying and I went back to the restaurant and I couldn't eat. And that was the day of the person that you love and the birthday that was supposed to be a happy moment. And I realized that I was in an environment that was making me be unhappy. And as an extension, everyone around me, my husband, my kids, because people feel that. And it's that moment that I realized this is not just a bit of an anxiety or this is not just stress that you have before a big project. This is deeper than this. And it took me months to actually realize that what I was going through was a burnout. I never thought about myself going through a burnout. I always saw myself as a confident woman, as someone who is strong. If you follow me on LinkedIn, you know that sports is a big thing for me. I did an Ironman. You imagine the resilience that you have
Yeah.
to do an Ironman, and all of a sudden, I was this weak woman who was crying in the restaurant, and I was like, "That's not me. I have to get out of this." It took me months to get out of that experience. It took me months first to accept that we all have struggles, that we all have mental struggles, even the strongest of us. It's human nature, it happens to everyone. And so I wanted to demystify this idea that we're unbreakable. I wanted to demystify this idea that we always have to be strong and that we can never have these moments of weakness. Because I think opening up and showing that we're vulnerable and that we can have these moments, is a sign of strength. And it took me months to get to the point where I was comfortable, like I am today, going in a show that you might have hundreds or thousands of people watching and saying, I went through burnout. I had these mental issues, mental health issues that made me lose myself during a period of time, but I was able to get out of it. I was able to get out of it. And similar to the lemon tree mindset, after almost a year, really, I went back, I looked at this experience, and I said, what was my story that can inspire others? But more importantly, what did I do to get out of that situation? And not only to get out of burnout, because my message is not only get out of burnout, is you can get out and you can thrive after burnout. Because I do believe that every time you have a challenge in life, whether it's you lose a loved one or you have a mental health issue or you have a major life change, you can actually become stronger because you have a lived experience that you didn't have before. And so I wrote Conquering Your Burnout selfishly because for me it was closure with this episode in my life, but also altruistically for others because I wanted my experience to inspire, but also provide a framework for people who are feeling lost and they need a little bit of help and they need to know that there is light at the end of the tunnel, but sometimes you're looking at the wrong end. So that was the purpose of Conquering Your Burnout.
I love that. So many people relate to that. And it's no coincidence. I have a lot of guests on this show, and every other one talks about a burnout journey. It's happening, it's pervasive. And it doesn't matter what country you live in, doesn't matter what nationality you are, what company you work for, what industry you're in, all the above. There are so many people suffering from burnout right now, Veronica. And it's causing a lack of joy. It's causing a lack of that fulfillment and purpose in what we do in our work. And we're bringing it home to our families. That's not good. We shouldn't be doing this, right? So it's important to note that if you are suffering from symptoms of burnout, and these could be physical symptoms, they could be emotional symptoms, it could be you're depressed and you were never depressed before, you're anxious and that's new. Start paying attention to those things that are new. You mentioned too that you were in that restaurant and you couldn't eat, so digestion, look at how your body is responding to your environment. It's really important. We can get skin rashes, all sorts of things. So that's just a little public service announcement that I'm putting out there to everybody. If you are suffering from burnout, you're not alone. I think that's really important. Every time I post about it, people pour in support from all over the world. And it surprises me every time, actually. But bravo to you for turning that pain into purpose and showing others in an altruistic way how they can overcome based on your experience. I love that. Um, but this is building your personal brand, right? So we've got books now. You're onward and upward with your career, your public speaking, you're getting in front of people in a live show type of way. You're doing all of the things that are building your brand. And you created opportunities for yourself. And I just want to highlight that because bravo to you and anybody else out there that is brave enough to step out there, put themselves out there in the world, build their brands, and create their own opportunities. I just want to applaud you for that and take a moment to congratulate you because that is not hard. That was pretty difficult, don't you think?
Absolutely, especially when you come from a background of the corporate cushion or the corporate
Mm.
golden cage, where you have everything at your disposal. I've worked for companies that just when I said I work for this company, I had hundreds of people inundating my LinkedIn with vendors, people who wanted to work with me, competitors. So you're used to these because you think that you're an extension of the brand that you work for. But once you're no longer in that brand, you realize that you don't have any brand. And so you have this reality moment of saying, wow, I've been working and investing in someone else's brand all these years, and I haven't done anything for myself, for my own name, for my brand. So I one day I woke up and I was like, well, where's Veronica? I'm not Veronica from Apple anymore. I'm not Veronica from Estee Lauder. I just have to create my brand. And so starting from zero is hard. And again, is this mindset of, okay, I just have to take the first step. Let's start there. Let's dream big, but start small.
Yes, I love that. I think so many of us have gone through a period like that. And, it's pertinent, it's timely to talk about this. Why? Because there are so many layoffs that have occurred and are occurring right now. The best, I'm going to repeat this and make this with emphasis. The best time to build your personal brand was a couple of years ago. The second best time is today. No matter who you are, no matter what your role is within your company, you need to build a personal brand. Why? Because you are so much more worthy than your title at work. You're so much more worthy than the salary that you have. You're so much more worthy than the company that you work for. Why? Because you're an individual and you inherently have worth. Showcase it, put yourself out there because you never know what's going to happen. And having a personal brand gives you a little bit of a safety net in the event a big life changing thing happens, like you get laid off or any of these things. Don't you think? Wouldn't you agree with that?
Absolutely. I think those moments where there's a major trigger is when you actually realize the importance of a personal brand. And I say this because I see that very often people who are for many years in big brands like I used to be, they don't really invest a lot in building their brand. It's often when you're suddenly fired or you're part of a layoff or you've been out of the job market for a while, that's when you realize the importance. So my message is personal brand is for everyone. You don't have to be a solopreneur or a freelance. It's really something that is going to benefit you because it's going to be with you forever, no matter where you go. So if you're going to invest in something, invest in your personal brand now.
Now, seriously, you heard it from Veronica. And that's based on pure experience, right? Because we've both been in that situation where we didn't have a developed personal brand. And it's like you're starting farther back. If you already have a developed personal brand, it's like having a midfield advantage. Really, truly is. You can already get in the door with places people already know your name and they have an association with you for something. That's a good thing. So, one more time, no matter who you are, no matter what industry you're in, no matter what level of experience you are in, or company or salary, develop a personal brand today. Start growing those roots. I'm thinking of like a lemon tree now. Start growing those roots because you want it to come to fruition for you eventually. It will. It always You're not going to regret building a personal brand, right?
Exactly. It's an investment that is always going to pay off. You're always going to have dividends from that. If you don't believe me, I'm going to give you a couple of examples. I've got
I love
speaking
it.
gigs from personal brand. I've got opportunities for freelancing. I'm currently being invited to podcasts. At the beginning, I was the one reaching out to podcasts. Now, usually, it's podcast hosts who reach out to me. So you start to create an ecosystem. It's not a one-off that is going to pay you dividends 1 month. It's constantly evolving, and the capital gets bigger too because your personal brand continues to expand. So I'm not just talking about abstract opportunities. I'm talking about opportunities that can be monetized as well, from public speaking to book deals and things like that.
Absolutely. It keeps paying dividends. Again, goes back to that compound interest analogy that I gave earlier. It will keep paying you dividends, literally and figuratively, right? So um, it helps anybody. But going back to building your personal brand and book authoring, I think we're all a subject matter expert in something. There's something that we all know that maybe we're the best at, maybe we're the most passionate about. Maybe it's just something that lights a fire under us like nothing else. Maybe it's our story. Write it down, memorialize it, and build a legacy. People like build that legacy that you want, so that you're remembered, right? I think one of the biggest things for me and inspirations that I had as I go through my personal branding journey is I wanted to be the one telling my story, Veronica. I wanted to be the one telling my story to the world. I didn't want somebody else to tell it for me. And if you write a book, it's yours. And you're the one telling your story, right?
Absolutely. If I can build on that, before I even started these two books, there is a third book that is in reality the first one. The first one that I
Mhm.
started writing, you just reminded me of it, is actually my story. I started
Wow.
writing this book when I was in Australia, and it was exactly what you said. I have two young daughters, and one morning when I didn't have a job, I woke up and I said, well, what's the story I want to tell my daughters when they grow up? Do I want to tell them the story of I was just unemployed and I was a victim of my own narrative and I didn't do much about it? Or do I want to tell them the story of a mom who turned things around and changed the mindset and is a fighter? Of course, I had the answer in me. We all do.
Yeah.
I started to write this book, and this book is really a memoir. I went back to my childhood. I've lived in 9 different countries all over the world. So it starts with that point of me feeling lost in Australia. Then I go back into the 9 countries where I lived to find myself, to find my values, to find what matters to me, bringing it back to this point. So this book,
Mhm.
I'm just finalizing it now. It's a longer book. I'm working with a mentor in Australia, and my big goal for this year is to have that book, that memoir, published. Because as you said, I want to be the one to tell my story with my words, and that's the story that I want my daughters to read when they're a little bit older.
I love that. And as you know, I documented my story as well. It's not published yet, but I do have a publication date, and that's August 18th on a Friday. I'm so excited. But this book, I have a LinkedIn page. Everybody go ahead and scan your QR codes, follow my page. This book details my story about confidence. And you mentioned confidence earlier as well, how you felt at one point you had a lack of confidence. Well, I kind of felt like that my whole life. And I decided to document the story, memorialize it as a way to just tell my story with the world. Again, I didn't want anybody else to tell it for me. I wanted to be the one that told my story and built my legacy. So this is my attempt at doing that. I'm so excited for the book. I can't wait. But it's possible for everyone. And that's one thing I want to leave everybody with today. There's 365 beautiful days every single year. We are truly blessed. If you work every single day, a very small portion towards your goals, you will absolutely get to any goal that you seek. If you're writing a large novel, you only have to write a page or less a day, a couple paragraphs a day, even one paragraph a day. You're going to be done your novel, you're going to be done your memoir in a year or less. So anything is possible, anything is achievable. Start building your personal brand. Wait for that investment to come in because it's all compounded interest and goes up from here, folks. But lovely. Thank you so much for the gift of having you on my show today, Veronica. I am so grateful that you came on the show and inspired this audience. Any final words or encouragement for people watching this show?
I will just go back to what I said previously of dream big, but start small. It's
Yes.
such a simple phrase, but I think people sometimes don't dare to dream big.
Yeah.
And so that means that they stay in a state of complacence. So dream big, so big that you get dizzy, really. Dream big. But then start small. Because if you dream too big and you want to make these big steps every day, you're not setting yourself up for success. So back to this idea of small steps over time when you zoom out as an Ironman woman, as a triathlete, is really every single small step that takes you to the finish line. So this idea of dream big, start small is something that I think about every single day. And I think it can be very inspiring because it's actionable.
So actionable. I love that. By the way, I'm at 15,000 steps today. You'd be proud of me. I've got my Apple Watch here, but but wonderful. I love that. Dream big, start small, start somewhere, just get started. Take the action because your future self will thank you. Thank you so much to my lovely guest, Veronica, for coming on the show today. Thank you for everyone who tuned in and watched. Please let us know if you have any questions about book authoring or building your personal brand. We love to hear from our audience members and people from all over the world. Thank you so much, and we will catch you on the next episode. Take care.
Thank you.